Oh my god. Okay, so I've been waiting to do this video for so long. Well, for maybe about a week, but it feels like a lifetime since I received this little palette. Oh. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do. I post videos when I can. Now, let's start. If you hang out in this YouTube art world, you know what this is. It is the Himi Miya gouache palette. I have heard about this palette for so long, and I have seen countless videos on this palette of people who tried it for the first time, and I really wanted to do my own video on the subject. I found this palette on Amazon. It was, first of all, so much bigger than I thought it would be. And it's really heavy too. It's really nice. And also, most videos I've seen on this palette had the 18 color set, and I realized that mine is the 24 color set. So I have a couple more colors. So the Himi Miya gouache palette is in fact a jelly gouache palette. So the gouaches come in jelly cups like this, and it's a 30 milliliter cup, and my palette cost like about $40. It's a really cheap palette, so it's apparently very worth it, and the reviews I've seen on it are quite good. You know, of course, it's not professional gouache, so you can't expect a professional result, but people are really satisfied in general. Also, it's my first time trying out gouache, so I know it's very different from watercolor and acrylics, and some people have the tendency to assume it's like watercolor, and it's not, so it's a mistake I'll try to avoid. Well, I'm not completely in the dark on this one. I've made a little bit of research for once. But first, before we try it, we are going to swatch it so we can have a look at all the beautiful colors that there is in this set. And then we are going to do a Lightfastness test. So we're going to see if the colors are light fast or not. When a paint is light fast, it means that it resists to the light. So the color won't change if it's exposed to the light. So for example, if you take a painting and you hang it on a wall near a window and there's direct light hitting the painting at certain hours of the day, the paint won't get paler or the paint won't change colors. That's what a light fast paint is. Some paints are going to be more light fast than others. And I can't explain why. I know that there's probably a good reason. Maybe it's the pigment or something, but I don't know about this. I've heard that gouache, well, especially non-professional gouaches, are not made to be light fast. So I'm not expecting them to be light fast, but still, I want to try it. I've seen another YouTuber do this test, and she said that some colors were more light fast than others, which I think is good to know. We're gonna start with the Lightfastness test, then I'm gonna come back with the result, and we are going to do a portrait, and we're gonna just see how they behave, see what it's like to paint with gouache. I think that the last time I painted with gouache was when I was to elementary school. I think that's what you use when you were a kid. I don't remember. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but this set comes with a brush pack. We have 3 brushes in here, so I'm gonna use those. But first, here are the swatches we just did. I really like the colors. I feel like there's a lot of options for me. I painted some black lines with acrylic because my goal was to see how opaque the gouache was. I'm covering half the swatches with some tape, and I'm going to put this sheet near a window for about a month to see if the paint that is exposed to the light will change color. So I forgot to mention earlier, but the paint palette comes with a painting palette here. which is very nice. And also you could always use the top of the palette here if you wanted more space to mix your paint. So it's very, very good. I already used this. Now we're gonna try a portrait. I don't wanna lose this paint that is in the little caps here before I throw them in the garbage. So I wanna use this paint. Now we are ready to paint. My sketch is already done. You've seen me sketch a lot, so I didn't put it in this video. And also this video will be long enough already. So let's just go right into the juicy stuff, which is trying out the paints. I chose this portrait for this first gouache painting because first of all, it's a portrait from the 100 head challenge, which I am still completing. But I chose this one especially because I think it's a bit simpler. There's not a lot of tiny little details, which could be a bit more difficult in my first gouache painting. And also I really like the colors in the background. So that's why I chose this one. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about gouache. So it's really different for me. I didn't really know what to expect at first, so I did a lot of research on YouTube. I watched many videos on how to use it and also just like painting process using gouache, just to see what the artist did, in which order they did it, what problems they encountered, and what they did to solve them. So now after a couple of hours of research, I'm finally ready to start my own painting and I know a little bit more what to expect. One main thing to know about gouache is that it reactivates when you put more water on top. You can add layers on top of each other. You just have to be very careful, especially if you want to add a more diluted layer on top of another one. If you're not careful enough, the layers beneath will mix with the new layer and the colors will muddy together. It's gonna give a result that isn't what you wanted. So it's the main thing to be aware of when using gouache. If you dilute your layers a lot, they can act a little bit like watercolors. And if you keep them more opaque, less diluted, they will look a bit more like acrylics. My plan with this painting is first to start with a diluted layer just to know where to put my colors. So it's just going to be a base layer. I'm going to cover it after. And I don't mind putting a first layer that's very diluted because my next layer will be less and less diluted. So I don't reactivate the layers beneath. First, I try to create a skin tone. I use the colors I have on the palette already and the ones in the lids. Her skin tone is very pale, and for this first layer, I have to say I'm not very satisfied with the color. I think it's way too yellow and it's a bit too dark. But since it's the first layer, I will probably be able to fix it later. I put another paper on the side so I can swatch each color before I use them. This is something I learned in a recent video that I watched. The most important thing when using gouache is to make sure that your colors are right from the first try. So you have to spend a lot of time mixing your colors and testing them before you use them because the colors can muddy very easily and they lose their vibrancy, they lose their saturation. So you have to make sure that you get them right on the first try. And I have to say that I didn't know that at the time, and I didn't really do that for this painting. I used a big brush for my first layer so I could place the colors quickly and easily, but after that for my other layers I'll use a smaller brush. I decided to keep my palette next to me in the frame so you could see me mix my colors. I already have some colors in the bottom part of the palette, as you can see. These are the colors I used when I made my swatches. So I decided to keep them in the palette and if possible, use them as much as I can in this painting so I don't waste any colors. My goal also was to use as much color as I could in the little lids before I throw them in the garbage. So really this painting was a way to not waste any paint. Another first is that it was my first painting in this new sketchbook. It's a Strathmore mixed media sketchbook, and I got it because I wanted to do more work with some watercolors, some acrylics, some inks. And as you have seen in my previous videos, every time I use these kind of mediums in my other sketchbook, which is made for drawing, the pages buckle and warp, and the paint really goes through the page and the other side of the page becomes unusable. So this time I wasn't sure what would happen because it was my first time using this sketchbook. I had the feeling that the paper would react better because, first of all, it's made for mixed media, and also the paper is a lot thicker than the paper I have in my drawing sketchbook. So I had the feeling that the page would react well to the water, but still it was something that I was keeping an eye out for. We have now finished our first layer. Now, I'm not sure if I should have painted the whole page like I did because, as I said, I know that gouache can reactivate and I'm used with watercolor. So when you paint a watercolor painting, you want to separate your painting in different areas of colors and also of proximity. So, for example, if I paint this portrait in watercolor, I would never have painted the hair and the background at the same time because the colors would have blended together. The blue of the background would have mixed in the hair, and then I could not fix it because watercolor is transparent. So you can't really fix these kinds of errors. But with gouache, I thought it would be fine at first because the colors won't mix as much. But then I thought maybe they'll reactivate later and then they'll mix. So I wasn't really sure. In the end, I was fine because gouache doesn't spread as much as watercolors, but it was still a concern that I had. As I said, I wasn't really satisfied with her skin tone. It's a lot paler in the reference image, and I had a lot of trouble getting the colors to match. So you'll see me struggle a lot with her skin tone throughout the whole video. Another thing to know with gouache is that light colors tend to dry darker and dark colors tend to dry lighter. So I think that's what happened with her skin tone. Since I'm not used with gouache, I don't tend to plan for this. So I tried to mix a color that would look like her skin tone. First of all, I didn't do a really good job with that. And then when the colors dried, they dried darker. So I always had this problem that her skin tone wasn't matching the reference image because of these two problems, because of the mix that wasn't perfect and because of the way the paint dries. So now, my friends, we have arrived to the ugly painting stage. This is a moment that happens in pretty much every painting. no matter what kind of medium you use. It's a point in the painting that is either in the beginning of the painting or in the middle, so the colors are placed. Everything is placed, but nothing is final. The details aren't there yet. You still have some colors you want to fix. But when you look at the whole painting, you just think that you ruined it and you want to start over. So that's where we are right now. The only way to fix it is just to keep going, push on, and try to ignore the ugly painting stage, because if you try again, if you start over, you're just going to reach that stage again. But still, even if I know that I'm going to reach that stage, every time I reach it, I'm filled with doubt. I wonder if I did the right thing, if I should start over, if gouache is the right medium for me, if I just suck. But really, it happens every time. So I know that this is normal and you just have to keep going. You have to tell yourself that you're being ridiculous, you're not a bad artist, and just keep going. So now you can see that I am still struggling with the skin tone. This is something I expected because in a lot of the videos that I watched, I could see the artist struggling with skin tones. I wasn't too surprised that it happened, but it was still very frustrating. However, in my research, I saw that the artists I watched got better when they practiced, which I guess makes sense. So I'm still hopeful that I will get better and that this is normal, and next time maybe it will take less time to achieve a good skin tone. Another thing with gouache that I discovered is that you end up using a lot of the white color. You need it to make your colors paler. Contrary to watercolor, which I'm more used with, if you want to make a color paler, you just dilute it more with water. So it's gonna lose a little bit of saturation that way. But with gouache, you can't do that because if you dilute your colors, you're going to reactivate the layers beneath. So the way to make your colors paler is to add more white to the mix. So this means that you're going to use your white color a lot faster than all the other colors. I have seen that some of the Himi Miya gouache sets come with 2 gouache cups, but in my case I only had 1. So I think that I'm going to have to go back to the art store at some point to buy a tube of white gouache. Okay, so now I decided to work on the eyes and lips because sometimes when you feel stuck and you're still in the ugly painting stage, or you've been trying to work on the skin tone for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, for half an hour, and it's just not working out for you, sometimes what I like to do is focus on a detail. In a portrait, I feel like it really comes together once the eyes and lips are there. They don't have to be final, they don't have to have all the details there, but if you start painting them, I feel like when you look back at your painting, it gets better. I don't know why, it just looks better. So that's what I decided to do right now. I was struggling on some other parts of the painting, so I decided to leave them aside for a bit, work on the eyes, because it's always super satisfying to work on eyes and lips. I don't know why, the colors are nice and there's more tiny detail. So I decided to do that and I thought it helped. Another thing you can do when you reach the ugly painting stage is to add more contrast in your painting. So that's what I did also. I added more contrast in her hair. And I feel like when you step back, you've done the eyes a little bit, you've done the lips a little bit, and you added a bit more contrast overall in your painting. It really helps to get out of this ugly painting stage. It's just a little tip, something that I do when I'm stuck. After that, I took a step back and I realized that she looked a little bit dead. There was a blue undertone in her skin which didn't help at all, so I decided to add more colors back in her face. Okay, so now you see that I added a lot of red in her face, and at this point I was really scared. I thought that I completely messed it up. So I tried to dilute the red edges so that they would be less intense, and I thought that helped. That's one of the other thing with gouache, since the layers can reactivate. If you know that, you can use it to your advantage, like what I just did. I thought that the edges between the white of her face and the red patches that I added were too intense. So I diluted the edges and the color reactivated a little bit. I could mix the edges together and make a smoother gradient. But now I really didn't like her skin, so I decided to add more white. I still wasn't too satisfied with her face after all of that, so I decided to give it a rest and to work on the background. Like I just said, sometimes when I struggle with a part of the painting, I just need to leave it aside, work on a different part, and then come back to it with fresher eyes. You'd think I was done with the skin, but nope. I still thought the skin was too dark, it was a bit too blue again, so I tried again. I added more pink and some white, mixed the colors a bit less, and after that I liked the result much better. And it really works with what I heard in my research, which was that if you mix your colors too much with gouache, the colors tend to get muddy, to lose their saturation, and this time I mixed the colors less and I liked the result much better. After that, we were pretty much done. I couldn't really do anything much to their skin anymore, so I decided to work on some finishing details. I tried using as much paint from the lids as possible because after that the paint would dry and would become unusable anymore. And after this painting, I knew that I would have to throw the lids in the trash can, so this was my last chance of using as much paint as I could. One thing I wanted to say before this voiceover is finished is that this week we reached 100 subscribers on my channel. I really wanted to thank you all guys if you're following me, because I know 100 subscribers is not a lot. Some channels have thousands, even millions of subscribers, so I'm really not there yet. But for me, it's my first 100 subscribers and it really means a lot. So thank you if you're subscribed to my channel. We are finished with this painting. As you see, I struggled a bit, but there was nothing unexpected in that. I'm very pleased overall. I'm very satisfied. It was a nice first experience with gouache and I can't wait to try again. Now we're just going to peel off the tape and then we'll go back to the lightfastness test. So a month has passed already, hence the change of outfit. So I got back my swatch sheet that I made a month ago. I put it near a window this whole time, so hopefully we'll see some change. Well, hopefully. Ideally, I wouldn't see any change, but I expect to see some changes in the colors that were exposed to the light compared to the ones that weren't. So we're going to peel off the tape and we'll be able to compare the light fastness of these different colors. Let's see what happened. Oh, I was scared that this would happen. Oh my God. Okay, so you see what happened? The page ripped and I thought about it this morning. I was scared that this would happen because this is a really cheap paper. And I remember it happening when I painted a watercolor. I remember ripping off the tape and the paint leaving with the tape. The paint didn't rip all the way, so we can still see the difference. So for example, we can see that this green is pretty much light fast. You know, I don't see a lot of difference between the part that was exposed to the light and the part that wasn't. Same with the orange, same with the white. But with the purple, we can see a big difference. You can see that the part that was exposed to the light, it just changed color. So it wouldn't be a good color to use if I wanted to create a permanent piece of art, but still the color is pretty nice. Good thing to keep in mind. Let's rip the next tape and I hope that the paint doesn't leave with it. Okay, so we can still see, at least there's that. So this green too is pretty good. This red as well, this yellow and the blue, all good here. We can't really see that much with this blue, but we can see with the swatch on top, so I think it's pretty good. This purple, we can see a difference again. So far, these two purple here aren't light fast. This pink seems okay, this orange too. With the pink here, I think it's fine. This brown is fine, this blue is fine, this green is fine too. And these two rows, can't really see much. Here I was saying that I was seeing a difference. I don't see it in the most opaque swatch, but in the lighter swatch, you can see a line here. So there's a slight difference. And the same thing with this. I feel like we can't really see it on camera, so it's really not a big difference. And these other swatches are good, I think. To recap, I would say that these four aren't light fast, but I wouldn't mind using these two because I think the difference, it's not really noticeable, but these two are noticeable. I don't think it's that much of a problem though, but it could be on the long term. I don't know if a painting was exposed to the light for, I don't know, 2 years. I don't know how these would change. And same thing with all of these. Maybe these aren't that light fast, but 1 month isn't enough to see the difference. That's to be expected with a student quality paint. So I wasn't expecting anything too good, but I'm pleasantly surprised with the result of these swatches. So good to know. Here is the final result. It definitely was a challenge to paint, but I'm really excited to start another painting with gouache. I haven't started one yet and it's been a month. Gouache really behaves differently than any other paint that I've used. I expected that, but I didn't expect how it would behave since I've never used it before. It really was different. It was hard, but I want to try it again. I see a lot of potential in it. I want to try some other portraits, but I also want to try some simpler shapes, some leaves and some trees and some landscapes with it. We are going to have a lot of fun with it for sure. I'm excited to have you with me on this gouache exploration journey and, to be honest, on this every kind of art exploration journey. I'm really trying a lot of different things, as you know. So thank you again for being with me. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up. Leave a comment too and subscribe if you're not already. I'll see you next time. Take care.